Good afternoon and welcome to CITMA's webinar on why mental health matters with our speaker today, Anne Charlton. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody understands the system. If you've not been on one of these CITMA webinars before, you'll see that at the right-hand side of your screen at the bottom there should be a Q&A box. So as we're going through this webinar, if you have any questions, please do type them into the Q&A box and make sure that you say that it's sending to all panelists so that we can all see, all the panelists can see those questions. As we're going through the webinar, what we'll do is we'll collate all those questions and at the end of Anne's presentation, which should be around 1:10 past 1, I'll then ask those questions for you. Please be aware that obviously what we'll do is if a few people ask very similar questions, we might put some of those questions together and ask them as one general question. So at this point, I'll move on and talk a little bit about our speaker today, Anne. So, Anne has been with Law Care for nearly 14 years and is a coordinator. She has substantial experience in speaking to audiences from every sector of the legal profession and also has regular slots on Law Care's helpline and the new web chat, regularly helping and learning and teaching people about the issues that are affecting the profession. So with that, I hand you over to our speaker this afternoon, Anne Charlton.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. I wanted you to actually hear the introduction because I think it's very important to have an understanding that I feel, having worked on the helpline, having worked for Law Care, that I am appreciative of the problems that are out there in the law and have been out there, and I think that always colours the way that Law Care is going to move forward. Lots of people talk about mental health and well-being, and in the past people used to throw up their hands in horror. It is now almost flavour of the month. It is accepted, it's acknowledged by all sections of the legal profession, but it's also acknowledged by society as a whole that our lives are so much busier, so much more competitive, so much more demanding than ever they were, that of course we've got to learn new ways of dealing with that if we want to stay fit and healthy. So let's go through my presentation, okay? The World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which every person realizes their potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully. That cuts both ways, both for the employer and for the individual, and can make a contribution to your community. It's absolutely essential if you want to live longer, healthier and happier that you do look after your mental health. It doesn't mean that you've got a mental illness. It means you've got mental health that you have to look after. So everybody's got this form of mental health. Is there still a stigma? Yes, there is. I'm not going to sit here and say to you, if you go to your employer and say, look, I'm so badly stressed, I can't come into work, and you have to have 6, 7, 8 weeks off. I can't say there isn't a stigma. There still is, but it's minuscule now. Really is reducing by the day compared to what it was. And that's what we've got to keep on working at, to make it not acceptable to be worn into the ground, make it acceptable to be easier, to acknowledge when things are not right for you and to ask for changes, and that there is a duty, an entitlement to have changes if things are making you poorly, either mentally or physically. But you can take a bit more personal responsibility, you know, and you can try and change your reaction, change things in your life. So you have to do certain things like looking after yourselves physically to make sure that you can cope with the demands that are placed upon you. It's not all down to your employer or the profession. So what is your well-being? They talk about mental health and well-being together. Your well-being it's all about you, how you function, how you feel, how you enjoy your life. And you see the third line of my slide, your relationships. Relationships are absolutely crucial. It is very, very important that in your work-life balance, in the living side of your work-life balance, outside of work, that you have relationships that are good and supportive, that you enjoy. If you are in a negative relationship, it burns off physical and mental energy. It makes you ill. It makes you perform less well. It makes you less happy. It means you won't live as long. If you're in a poor relationship, I'm sorry, there is a short, sharp pain, but it is better to be out of a bad relationship. In the longer term, it's absolutely crucial for you. So relationships, that word comes through in a lot of the slides. Okay. So why does it matter to you? And I will repeat, if you want to live longer, healthier and happier, it is important that you take responsibility as much as you can for looking after your well-being. You feel more positive about yourself, you feel more confident, you build up personal resilience when little crises come along because you've got this self-belief, you can deal with it better. It gives you vitality, self-determination and better physical and mental health. It's important, but that's something that you can do and can look after for yourselves. So why workplace mental health? Looking after people's mental health is worthwhile for you, but also for the firm. It means that the firms have happier clients, get more work out, have less staff turnover, more staff retention, they make more money. I accept that, but that doesn't matter. It means they pay their staff more as well in the long run. So looking after people's mental health is worthwhile for the individuals working in the firms and for the firm and for community in general. The World Economic Forum and all governments are now accepting mental health. Look at the World Family, they're all getting involved. There is lots of movement about mental health now. It's okay to talk about it. Now is the time that you can put your views forward and perhaps get things changed. Now is the time. It's time to be proactive and not reactive. You need to be changing things, thinking of ways of taking things forward. That's really important. And you can have a very strong role in that. So why does it matter in the legal workplace that you have this resilience and good mental health and well-being? It matters to you as an individual, it matters to the employer, it matters to the profession, and it matters to the general public as well. Let's look at each of those aspects. If you want to be competent, to be at your best, to be a good communicator, to turn out the best pieces of work, high quality of work, less mistakes, quicker, more efficient, that you will have confidence in. If you want to be resilient against little bumps along the way, those are the things why it matters to you, why your mental health and your well-being is very important. If you want to live longer, healthier, happier, it is very important that you take a positive role in what's going on in your lives. It matters to you individually, it matters to the employer, because I've talked about staff retention. When you've got big departments and you've got one or two people off perhaps with stress or something stress related, the rest of the people left behind have to work that much harder. And that creates problems for them. There are problems for the individual who's off work, but there are also problems for those left behind. It also impacts on clients because maybe the phone doesn't get picked up quite as quickly. The work goes out a day later, that sort of thing. Or maybe the person who's absent, their work isn't immediately passed on to somebody else. Perhaps they think they're going to be back in a couple of days instead of a couple of weeks. So happy people are productive people. You will much more enjoy your work. You'll enjoy going through the front door in the morning. You'll enjoy meeting your colleagues. You'll enjoy the work that comes across your desk. So happy people are productive people, and that can only be good for you as an individual, but for your employer, and of course for your clients. And from the employer's point of view, they need to make certain that the management, the supervisors, the leadership that you get is manned by the right people, the people who are good people who can manage people. They won't necessarily be the best producers, they won't be the best people for doing the work, but they will be the best people for managing people. And it's important that employers appoint people for the right reason. It's not the guy who's got £20,000 more fees last year who gets the position of team leader. It should be the person who's going to amalgamate the team, galvanise them, make them work better, make them enjoy it more. So leadership has to be the right people. From the employer, if you've got teams that are depleted, there's more likely to be mistakes. And as I said, that rubs on, and clients hear about it, other firms hear about it, the public hears about it. It damages your reputation. And there is a risk management issue, because if mistakes are made when people are so very busy because the team's depleted, there's more risks likely to come in. That's why you've got to have good team leadership, galvanising the team and covering the gaps. And of course, the SRA requirements are always getting stronger and stronger, more demanding. So the employer has to have people who are mentally as well as physically fit, and it's important to the employer. It's important to the wider community. Why? Because they look upon us. The wider community regard us as the most influential profession, in my view. If they've got a problem, where do they go to? They go to the legal profession. They look upon us to be professional, to be honest, to be very capable, to be able to solve their problems. They rely on us enormously. We also produce an awful amount of money for the economy, so we are important to the wider community. How many clients, do you think, come down your corridors absolutely bouncing with joy and to say, oh, I've got good news for you today? I don't imagine there's any one of you listening that can say that. Every client comes to you with their issue. They're placing it on your desk in your capable hands and expecting you to deal with it. They are relying on us as a profession and on you as professionals. And somebody who is a bit tearful that day or under enormous pressure, not able to concentrate properly, who's got problems at home and can't concentrate, that person is not going to get those problems sorted correctly. So it's important that you recognise that and try to keep yourself on an even keel as often as you can. You recognise any issues you've got, any problems, identify them, and then try to change things. Try to do things for the best. So the law, the Health and Safety Executive, says the law is the third most stressful job. Normally, if I was in a room with you, I would say, okay, hands up, who do you think the numbers 1 and 2 are? And I'll tell you, it's health and welfare workers, nurses, midwives. It is not doctors, it's not dentists, it's not accountants, but law is the third most stressful job. It is accepted that we have huge stresses on us, huge expectations, and those really take an enormous role that we have to respect. The junior lawyers carry out a survey every year now, and last year in 2018, of the responses, 82% of junior lawyers said they were stressed. That's a huge number, huge number. It indicates that at the younger end of the profession, they're finding it pretty tough, pretty tough. And I think we have to bear that in mind. We should bear in mind how we treat those youngsters just coming in and what our expectations are of them. There are lots of studies in the States about this area, about the stress and the pressures out there in the legal profession. And they have been, we collaborate with them as an organisation a great deal. But the latest study showed that 28% of lawyers were depressed, 19% were anxious, 23% were stressed, 21%, that's quite a high percentage, screened positive for hazardous, harmful and potentially alcohol-dependent drinking. When we're under pressure, because of our type of personalities, they say that in the law, we all will have an A-type personality, which is very driven, very competitive, much more likely not to admit that we're finding things difficult, and we're much more likely to turn to alcohol, to turn to the extra cigarette, to turn to a little bit of drugs, to dabble in drugs, to try and make us feel better and to cope. So that US study does not surprise me, but it's indicative of that there are pressures out there and how people are looking to deal with them. And it's very, very important that you remain fit and healthy and don't turn to outside things to help you. You've got to keep yourself fit and healthy at all times. Mind also do surveys, obviously on the subject, but not necessarily in the legal profession on its own. And so this survey is not just about in the legal profession, but it was 44,000 people, and said that 44,000 people revealed poor mental health. That's incredible. Out of those that they researched, it was half of all of them were relating to poor mental health. That is going to correlate with the legal profession. Okay? So the main reasons cited for concealment included fear, shame, job insecurity, worried they're going to lose their job, worried they're not going to have any salary coming if they do lose the job, fear they're not going to get promoted, people are going to laugh at them, people are going to minimise them, the stigma. That's what it's talking about. It's still there, but it's not as great. There was an article in the Times, I think it was the 13th of May, might have been the 15th of May this year, that had done research, and the health and safety executive had talked to people, and they said that more than 60% of those that they interviewed would not tell their employer if they felt they'd got a mental health issue. That's very sad. We're saying talk about it. There is a stigma, but it's nowhere near great. It's not going to cost you your career. It's going to help you to talk about it and to try and get things changed. It's really important. So the Institute of Directors revealed poor relationships with line managers and workload were the two impacts, followed by relationships with colleagues. And do you remember I said relationships, whether it be at work or at home, is a very important thing that you need to manage to keep your well-being, to keep your health good. And you must make every effort to get on with your colleagues and have good relationships with them. Don't expect, I know that most of you did not choose the person who sits next to you at work. That's done by HR or the partners or management. So therefore, you cannot expect to love. You can't necessarily expect to like everybody you work with. Whereas at home, I hope you do have people that you love and like. It's very important that at work you respect that you don't necessarily have to like the people you work with, but you've got to respect them for the job that they do and their abilities, and the two of you have to dovetail in. Otherwise, if you begin to allow your personal feelings and resentment of the person next to you, it will spoil your health. It will spoil the way you carry out your work. It's very important that you do not allow that to happen. But it's something that you can manage, remember? You can manage. The Health and Safety Executive said that work-related stress accounts for 40% of all work-related ill health cases in Great Britain. Look at all those stats there and the factors citing why people were off. Out of all the people that go into a doctor's surgery, what percentage would you imagine are there with stress-related illnesses? I'll tell you, it's 65% of the people filling doctor's surgeries are there because of stress-related illnesses. It might be alopecia, it might be heart disease, it might be muscle strain, it might be stiffness across the neck, it might be skin bumps, it might be high blood pressure, it might be something to do with the gut, all sorts of things. But it costs us as a community, it costs you as a fellow colleague time and effort. So it's very important that we manage our work-related stress and take personal responsibility for dealing with it and making it as good as we can. Don't just blame other people. Please accept that you have a role in it and you can try and change things. And people will help you to change it because they want you to be working at your very best. So I think this is a wonderful statement. It's by a lady over in America. And it's well worth looking at. As lawyers, we identify ourselves as problem solvers, but also the community identifies us as problem solvers. We have high expectations of ourselves and multiple demands, and the profession has high expectations and multiple demands of us, and the clients do too. We're often convinced that if we admit to the stress our lives generate, that's a sign of weakness. And that's what we've been talking about. It is not a sign of weakness. It is acknowledged that it's modern day living. but it doesn't mean it's not happening. It means it's got to be recognised and it's got to be dealt with. And no one is immune, and most of us cannot cope alone. And that's the secret. Share it, talk about it, seek help. That's the important thing. In the United States, then, those are the things they talked about. 28% of lawyers were depressed, 19% anxious, 23% stressed. The JRD survey, we talked about that. And the cost to you as a taxpayer, cost to the government, to the state, to society, is enormous. Remember that percentage of people going into doctor's surgeries. That's important to remember. So the legal workplace is very competitive, very pressurised, has a long hours culture. It's better than it used to be. There's lots more flexible working now. That's one of the things that you can negotiate with your employer if you're finding that A, the commute is too much, that there are days when you get so many interruptions at the end of the day you feel you've not done anything at all, nothing's gone off your desk. Very important that you look at it, look at where the work's coming from, look at why you're getting all those interruptions, see if you can do something about managing those interruptions. All of that is important. Huge expectations of you, and we're in a very negative profession. And I don't mean that in a nasty way, but how many of your clients come along, jumping along the corridor and say, got good news for you today? Oh, you'll never guess what. There are occasions it might be that you have a client come along and say, I've just taken over this company, I'm really thrilled. You might get somebody who's won the pools or won the lottery, had a wonderful legacy, but on the whole, all of our clients in the legal profession are coming to you with negative. They have got problems that they want you to solve. So you're surrounded by that, and that's another reason why you absolutely have to have a work-life balance that's positive, so that when you're finished during the day, that you step into a work-life balance and don't think about work once you pull down the shutters, but go and enjoy a different sort of lifestyle. That's really important. Really important to make you live well, and live long and healthier and happier. So stress is a balancing act between the demands and pressures that we experience and how you find within yourself, within your core, the ability to cope. So it is a balancing act, but it's an balancing act that you can have more role in and be more effective. It's about acknowledging it, standing back for a second and saying, goodness me, I got really wound up about that. That made me sweat, or that made me a little bit tearful or bad-tempered. You need to look at it. And the demands, where do your demands? Because stress is the balancing act between the demands or pressures and our resources. So where do the demands come from? They come from clients, problems that clients bring to you, but they also come from your pressure you're putting on yourself. The things that you're thinking about, the things that you want to achieve, how you want to deal with the job. But they also come from physical problems. Some people, unfortunately, are born with physical problems. As we get older, we develop physical problems and relationships, that magic word relationships, which refers to those with your colleagues and those with people outside. And so how do you deal with it? You have an inner core, an inner belief in yourself, the way that you see life, the way that you want to go, what you want to achieve, and your perceptions, and your qualifications, the things you've learned along the way, your experience. You've got all of that to deal with it, but you also rely on friends and colleagues and family to support you and help you through that day. So all of that is very important, but you must never be afraid of talking about what's going on, because talking, a problem shared is a problem halved. Talking about it is not saying that you're incapable. It means that you've got an interest, you're concerned, you want this job done right. Always talk about it. Seek help. So a bit of pressure is good for you, though. If you had no pressure at all, you'd be flatlined. You'd still be in bed in the morning. You wouldn't get out of bed. When we wake up, we think, what am I going to do for breakfast? I must put the washing machine on. What time have I got to be in at work? Have I got my papers with me for work today? What are the kids going to have in their lunchbox? Where should we go on holiday? All lots and lots of things going through your head. Then you get downstairs and you've got all the family things that are associated with it. You get into the office, and you've got all the work that's in the office waiting for you. But a bit of pressure is absolutely good for you. It's motivating, it gives you a purpose in life, no action, no motivation, no action, no reward. So pressure is good for us, but you have to find where your optimum level is. Never allow yourself to go over that edge. When you start to get the palpitations, when you start to get the aches and pains, when you start to get the migraines, when you get those things, you need to recognise them and stop and realise that you're at your optimum and you really can't take any more. You have to learn to manage that, and you have that ability to manage it and change things. You must not be concerned about talking about changes. So what can organisations do? We have lots of booklets. We have an excellent website, and there are booklets for firms on there. And well-being is also not only your personal responsibility to look after it, it's also a leadership duty. And that comes from your team leaders, your departmental heads, managers, partners, directors, whatever it is. Well-being is a leadership duty. Nobody should be piling work on people with total disrespect for what the impact is going to be on them. Nobody should be doing that. It's really important that it is considered a duty. And if you feel that things are not right, you should, in as pleasant a way as you can, make a note, try and get other colleagues to agree with you, and put it forward to your team leader, your managers, that this isn't quite right. Perhaps we can have a look at it and discuss it and see what can be changed. So organisations should create an environment where you are able to perform at your best and achieve your maximum potential, and be able to walk out the door of an evening and think, I've had a good day at work, I've done some really good work there. And embed positive approaches, because remember I said the law is actually quite a negative profession in a lot of ways. So a positive approach to achieving an end result which is acceptable to the client, acceptable to the legal profession, that is something to work towards. Well-being should not be poo-pooed. It's not airy-fairy. It is absolutely essential for us all. And promote a culture of acceptance of differences. We are all different. Don't expect everybody to react in the same way as you or to do the same things as you. We are all different. Okay? So we should be taking practical steps. Practical steps such as raising awareness. I think I've jumped a slide here. Let me just go back one. I'm so sorry. Let me make sure I haven't. Right. Okay. Sorry, I thought I jumped a slide. So, World Mental Health Day is October the 10th. National Suicide Day is also coming up, and unfortunately, we still have connotations where we combine the two in our minds. Suicide is often associated with mental illness. Certainly, people who take their life have lost the wish to be on this planet, and that's because their mental health has got out of kilter. But that is coming up soon as well in September. But practical steps are encourage a better work-life balance, and that means making sure that every individual is treated as fairly as they possibly can. And that may be having a day working from home, or coming in later 2 days of the week to enable them to take the kids to school 2 days a week. Yeah, they may have to work an hour longer of an evening, but they can make the family arrangements. It's being flexible, encouraging good workers to be rewarded with a flexibility and which will produce a better work-life balance. But it is crucial for you that you do have a work-life balance. A work-life balance doesn't mean 50-50. I don't say that. What I say is that a work-life balance is that when you have finished your day's work, you step into the other side of your life and you do not think about work. So if you are not able to leave the office till 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever the time is, then I don't necessarily say that that should be done on a regular basis. But if you have completed what you needed to do that day by that time, then you should finish your day and you pull down the shutters. And what you must do is step then into your other side of your life, to your life balance. And that is the crucial part, having a balance, so that As soon as you finish your day's work, you know you've done as much as you can, you step into your work, into the other side of your work-life balance, and you do the things you like to do. You spend things with your family. You might go swimming, play football, play golf, go and watch a film, go and see family. You do things that you want to enjoy. And I will guarantee if you do that, and if you pull down the shutters at the end of your working day, whatever that time is, and do not allow work thoughts to impinge on your other side of your work-life balance, you will be rejuvenated each morning. You'll be much more sharp and much more up for it. If you keep on thinking constantly, all the time, playing through your mind about what you've got to do in the office, that wears you out, it debilitates you, and you will be worn out the next day and you will not perform to 100%. If you have a work-life balance, you'll be much more up for it, you'll be much more proficient, there'll be less mistakes, you'll be sharper. It is absolutely crucial for you. Okay, so practical steps are, if you feel that you'd like some extra training on something, ask for it. In this day and age, you're more likely to be granted it. And if you'd like to move into a different area, discuss it and ask if it's possible. Don't ever not try to move forward. Make sure you're getting adequate supervision. Make sure that supervision is good for you. Make it work. If it doesn't work, make useful, non-competitive suggestions on how the supervision can be organised. Okay? And talking, we do blogs, we've got case studies on our website. It's very important, I think, that people see examples of what's happened when things have gone wrong or things have happened and how they've worked out for people. So sharing lived experiences is very important. But if ever you've got a colleague or somebody working with you that you are concerned about, maybe they come in and they're very red-eyed and you can see they've been crying, or they come in and they smell, or they don't seem to eat enough at lunchtime, or whatever it is, whatever worries you, talk to them, start the conversation. There is no harm in starting a conversation. It's absolutely crucial and really important, so we strongly encourage that. Start the conversation. You might get rebuffed, don't worry. And if you want, you can put up posters on the loo doors when people go and sit in the loo and have a few minutes peace and quiet to think about what's just happened. Maybe they've had a telling off, maybe they've had a bad phone call from a client. If you get posters and it says, phone law, okay, you can talk to somebody who's been there, seen it, done it, won't tell anybody, has experience in the law, it can help. So remember to look out for your personal self-care alarm bells. That's the inability to switch off, your mind constantly worrying, constantly thinking about work. That's not on. You've got to learn to cut off. You've got to take more control. Feeling completely overwhelmed, bad-tempered, irascible. I get very bad-tempered when I'm under pressure. I realise it. And so being prickly is one of them. Aches, pains, bumps and lumps. We'll come on to a slide in just a few seconds that I want you really to look at. But some of the signs of stress are alopecia, skin bumps, sores, mouth ulcers, all those sort of things, little minor things, but they are usually stress-related. Stress causes such a lot of things, including cancer. All the major cancer research is looking into the effect of stress on our lives. In the old days with the caveman, he only had 1 or 2 decisions to make a day. We now make hundreds of decisions, personal and business, every day. That is putting extra pressure on us, okay? And if you find that you're cancelling plans, you've made arrangements to go and play in the six-a-side tournament tonight, or you're taking the kids to the pictures and you have to cancel them, start to look at it. That's not on. If you make plans, the other side of your life has to take place. You will be a much better worker, a much better professional if you manage that better. Loneliness, feeling that you can't talk to anybody, not having any supportive relationships either in the office or at home is not good for you. And irrational behaviour, that could be something bordering, I use bipolar, that's quite the extreme, but it could be spending more money than you should, stopping smoking again, drinking more than you should. You need to look when things start to change. Wanting to cry, feeling completely drained is the opposite end of that, where nothing is impacting on you. You've lost your personality, feeling you can't cope, the irritability again, loss of motivation. That's the negativity. Law is negative if you let it be. It shouldn't be. It's a wonderful profession. It has enormous benefits for you, for the people that you help, and there should be a motivation. So when you start to lose the love of it, you need to stop and think what's going on, and perhaps well worth getting a well man or a well woman check to see if you're okay. And low self-esteem, remember I talked about negativity. That's one of the things that you've got to look out for. Self-belief, that is always challenged when you're stressed, and you should never ever feel that you are not worthy of where you are. So stress also will make you have muddled thinking, lack of concentration, making more mistakes, crying, confusion, poor judgment, not being able to control your desk, papers all over the place, forgetting things. Those are the things, if you start to get days like that, you know you're under enormous stress. You need to take a step back and look to change whatever you can. Physically, there will be lots of things going on in your body, lots of things. Increases in aches and pains, breathlessness, loss, weight, gaining weight. It varies depending on your metabolism. Frequent headaches, overall fatigue, feeling you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. That's one of the signs. But this is the slide that I want you to look at after this is over, because that is made by the NHS. It's not made by us. And stress can make you very, very ill. It is impacting on all parts of your body without you realising, internal and external. Please do take an opportunity to look at that slide. It's important. So we talked about the classic stress symptoms, we've mentioned them, changes in behaviour, getting less work done, deterioration in relationships, that magic word again, relationships, accident prone. You're much more likely to have a little bump in the car because your judgment is poor, your concentration's poor, you're thinking of other things. And changing sleep patterns. Maggie Thatcher needed 2 to 3 hours sleep a night, Tony Blair a bit more. And you have to get your sleep, it's important. You should keep a sleep diary, keep a note by the bed, and if you remember what woke you up, try and mark it down on a bit of paper, and it should technically allow you to go back to sleep. If you're tossing and turning, get up, get out of bed, and try and do something else positive to make your mind think about something else, and that should stop it worrying about things. And technically they say that you should go back to sleep after about 25-30 minutes. Lots of people will think, oh, God, I had a dreadful day, I'll go outside and have a cigarette. Or first thing I do when I leave home is I'm going to have a pint. You shouldn't smoke, drink, or even eat, and definitely not dabble in drugs. They are all depressants. They'll give you a short, sharp taste, but they won't make you any better whatsoever. Okay, so please bear that in mind. I love that by Oscar Wilde. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. That's really true. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. Please remember that. So recognize when you're stressed, listen to your body, listen to your brain, take personal responsibility. Don't blame it on everybody else. Other people are responsible sometimes, but so are you. Change what you can. It may be that you talk about it to your manager and say, this needs to change. If it can't be changed, you have 2 alternatives. You adopt acceptance, which means I've done my very best. I'll try again in 6 months' time, but I've just got to get on with this. But if you can't get on with it, then you may have to move on, if it's that bad for you. But that's your decision. But don't waste time and energy. Life's too short. Don't waste time and energy on things you can't change. So remember the signs. Always ask for help. See your GP, your tutor, your student counsellor, if you're still a student. Any of those, seek help. Talking about it, there is no shame. A little bit of stigma, but nowhere near as great. Talk to someone you trust. Prevention is better than cure, and always remember that we're there. If you're having a particular stress issue, work out a fire break for you, and that might be going to the drinks machine. Some people would say they go outside and have a cigarette, and I would always say, please don't smoke. But anyway, that's part of the draw. But it's important that you work out a fire break And maybe that you just sit for a minute, close your eyes, and do a bit of mindfulness just for a minute. It breaks the cycle of pressure. Okay, it's important that you work out something when you recognise you're under pressure to take that pressure away. Sorry. And everybody should have a mid-morning, a lunch and a mid-afternoon break because it puts you back in control. It breaks the cycle. But please, never eat or drink at your desk. Move away from your desk. That is absolutely essential that you go to fresh surroundings, okay? Absolutely essential. Always ask yourself what you can be doing about rather than what you can be worrying about. I'd like you to look at a gentleman called Alfredo Pareto. He does a time management system, and a time management system will help you if you're finding that you're not managing your desk. He will help you to identify your prime time. We all have an important period in our waking day when we're at our best, and it's important that you recognise when your prime time is and do the most difficult tasks then. And it helps you to manage your day. And he talks about putting things into boxes at the end of each day if you're not post-driven, or after the post is opened in the morning, and only putting things on your desk that you're going to deal with. That stops your mind getting muddled. So his name is Alfredo Pareto. Okay? And he says stop time wasters. That might be going to some meetings where you don't speak, leaving your door open and saying good morning to everybody who goes past, because that spoils your concentration. It means stop looking at emails when you're doing a difficult piece of work, because every time you move your eyes off, you break your concentration. So it's important. Keep things in perspective. It's never the end of the world. Keep things in perspective. Think positive. Believe in yourself. You are a professional. You're well trained. You're very capable. And I love that saying by Churchill. The pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. But learn from your mistakes. Admit your mistakes, learn from them, and make sure you don't do them again. And always pat yourself on the back. That's important. Patting yourself on the back is terribly important. But don't forget to also thank your colleagues. If they've done something right, tell them. That brings an enormous glow to people. This slide now tells us about the things that we've talked about. Stress-proof yourself so you're less physically receptive, so be prepared. Get a good night's sleep. Remember to deal with your sleep problems if you've got some sleep problems. Keep yourself as healthy as you can. Eat and drink properly and in moderation. You've got to take care of yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You might have a very caring spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, but you've got to take care of yourself. 6 R's for stress prevention. Personal responsibility. Always look back and change what you can. Have periods of relaxation. That's that work-life balance. That's important. Eat and drink appropriately and have fun. Have that work-life balance. Firms should create a culture of acceptance that we are all different. Because you're different doesn't mean you're incapable. They should talk about mental health and encourage you to tell them when things are not right, and they should offer appropriate training and development. So acceptance of the things that are going on in society starts from the top and from the team leaders. Challenges stigma, but above all, treat your colleagues with respect, and I would expect you to be treated with respect by your colleagues too. And create an environment where you achieve your maximum. That's what you're looking for. You can have supervision. Make sure your supervision is good for you and that it's worthwhile. If it's not, do something about it to change it. There's Mental Health First Aid Week. Mind has got an excellent website. And Mindfulness has got a business charter now for helping people to be able to take breathers when they're at the desk. These are our top 10 tips. I've got them in a little pull-out booklet. If you're interested in having a paper copy, do let us know and we'll send you some. But those are the 10 things that we have touched on our slides today, but they're things that are important. What about this from Andy Warhol? They always say time changes things, but you have to change them for yourself. Take personal responsibility. Don't expect others to always do it. So who are we? We were established 22 years ago. We're funded by every section of the legal profession. We cover the UK and Ireland and all branches of the legal profession. Plus, the qualified papers for anybody in the profession, unqualified and families are also covered. We are manned by solicitors and barristers or former solicitors and barristers, people who've worked in the law. We think that's important. We cover from students right the way through to retirement. We'll help anybody in the law because that's what the profession needed. We were set up 20 years ago by the Law Society of England and Wales. Great foresight. They had a problem with some alcoholic lawyers, and that's how we were started off. They set up law care, it was called soul care then, to help these lawyers who weren't coping very well. It quickly evolved into all issues other than alcohol. But we'll talk to anybody associated with members of the profession, and we understand life in the law. We think that's really important, and we'll really try to help. We offer support, we offer education and prevention. We've talked about this for 22 years, and it's only now that people are taking notice. We do lots of research across the globe as well. We liaise with Australia in particular and the USA, and we're driving change. We really are. We've been a pain to people. We know that it's the only way we've been able to get heard. But if anybody's got anything they'd like to talk about, please do contact us. Our helpline is free, it's independent, it's confidential. We used to be open 7 days. We're open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5:30. And we are absolutely non-judgmental. We've heard it all before. We're not going to put up our hands in horror and say, oh, you've done what? We've heard it all before, okay? We'll signpost you on, and we're a member of the Helpline Partnership, so we try to keep our standards as high as we can. We've got a network of peer supporters. They are people, judges, barristers, solicitors, SILEX, CITMA, CIPA, people who've had an issue and got themselves straight, and they give their time freely and in absolute confidence. And sometimes it's really, really useful to put a member, put a caller through to somebody who's been there, seen it, done it. I can try and empathise if I'm on the helpline, but sometimes I haven't been in that situation, and sometimes it's really useful. So people contact us on the whole, that's the percentage. More stress than depression. Bullying and harassment really doubled last year. Sexual harassment, we have a bit, but not as much as we thought, but I think it will come. You can have a look at our website, an excellent website. We've got fact sheets, the 10 wellbeing tips. We're doing another one that's coming out any day now on email and time management. We've got tips for healthy workplaces for managers in particular. We have a law care news. Sign up for it if you're interested, please. It's absolutely free. On our website, there's case studies, there's blogs, and we're doing web chat now. We're just started it. We're only doing it 2 or 3 days of the week. But if you fancy a web chat about something, give us a try. We won't bite the head off, and we'll listen, and we'll certainly try to help you. That's our helpline number. It's absolutely free and confidential. Told you about the website. We've got fact sheets, 16 informative fact sheets: alcohol, depression, stress, career development, moving on from the law, those sort of things. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that you will have got something from it. I hope you never need to call us, but if ever you do, we'll do our very, very best to help you. The picture I'm leaving with are members of our board and then some of our helpers from all sections of the legal profession, because we do the legal walk. If ever you feel you can do something, you want to do something, I'm going to give a talk next week at a firm, and a lady's doing they're doing a bake a cake and selling the cakes, and the proceeds are going to law care. So we always need it because we have a welfare fund, and people who need counselling. In my area, counselling is it takes over 4 months on the NHS wait list. So sometimes when we know that people really are in a bit of a state, we'll try and afford 10 sessions of counselling up to £500. So we're always looking to put money into our welfare fund. Thank you all very, very much indeed. I think Aaron will now come back to me about some of the questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. As Anne said, if you've got questions, please do put them in the Q&A. There's a question here that says, what can you do when you see that your manager's not doing well?
I don't know if the caller means that the manager is not managing well, or that the manager themselves is not well. Let's assume it's that the manager himself or herself is not well. Always start the conversation, whether it be the tea boy or the senior partner. You know, you might get rebuffed, but in 90% of the time, you should always start the conversation and say, hi, I noticed that you were a bit late coming in, or I noticed you didn't look quite so bright today. Is there anything you'd like to have a chat about? We'd like to go for a coffee. But if it's that the manager is not managing well, and it is impacting on the way that you perform and the way that you feel, then something has to change. And it's not going to change unless you do something about it. What you have to do is be constructive and non-confrontational, non-negative, but be constructive. And I would make a list of the things that you'd like addressing. If it's just you, then you ask for a one-to-one and perhaps ask another person, maybe somebody from HR or another colleague, to sit in so that there's evidence of that you are non-confrontational, non-aggressive, that sort of thing. But it won't change unless you do something about it. You cannot keep on putting up with it if you're being managed badly or being told to do things that you know are not right. So you have to do it. But if it's that he's not well, then it is the first aspect of my reply. I don't know if that's deep enough, or if should we leave it at that one, or would you like me to say something else?
I think that's it. They did come back and say that if they're not feeling well, so I think that's the first bit you were talking about. So in relation to the sort of people who call, do people of different stages in their seniority tend to call you about different things, or are people's experiences very similar?
We have a complete spectrum on the helpline. Is that what you mean, on the helpline?
Well, I guess, yeah, on the helpline, whether there are certain things that, you know, younger members of the profession tend to call with, and then different, perhaps if there's a trend with, you know, people who are more, you know, further into their career. I didn't know whether perhaps
there's no absolute trend or pattern. For instance, that the juniors only call about too much work. We do get a lot of trainees who have poor supervision, who feel that they are going to come out of their training period feeling they're still incapable, that they haven't had enough guidance or experience. And our advice is always the same. It's not going to change unless you try to have an input. And when we get trainees, for instance, who say, okay, we're not getting the training, we're very concerned, we're not going to be able to move on to a full-time position, we would say, okay, put it down in writing, make a list, a detailed list, non-aggressive, non-challenging, put it to the manager. Again, try to get somebody else to accompany you. But if not, we wouldn't hesitate in saying you can start to look to see if there's any other jobs out there. But sometimes our advice would be the opposite, would be, depending on the circumstances, would be, look, just hang on. You've got 4 or 5 months to go. It's not the end of the world. You've managed 19 months. Get to the end. Try to improve it in the last period of time. Try to go to another manager and get some different experience. But try to hang on to the end of the time. You're then qualified. Yes, you might need to go on some more training sessions then, but you've done your 2-year period. It just varies on the particular circumstances.
Okay, someone's asked, what can you do as an employee to promote well-being in the team?
First thing is to talk about it and to have team meetings. And when you have regular team meetings or supervision meetings, to perhaps go around the department beforehand and say anonymously, give them a little note and say, is there anything that you'd like to see change that would make your working conditions a bit better, or make you feel a bit better, or make your day a bit easier? We can't necessarily guarantee there'll be any changes, but if we don't talk about it, then nobody will know. And you could perhaps do it anonymously if you think that some of them, put a box and they can pop it in the box, and nobody will know who put it in the box or which bit of paper in the box is from whom. And then have a team meeting, and you all sit round and say, right, now we're going to go through our suggestion box and talk about it. Or if you get enough people saying the same thing, that you put it together as a paper and do it professionally and seriously, and give it to HR if there is an HR, and to the team leader or departmental head, and say, we're concerned about this. These are our thoughts. These are the things we'd like to see. And then it's up to management to consider it. You won't always get what you want, but it's important that you encourage it. It's very important, to, as far as well-being goes, that you insist that everybody has a break, mid-morning, mid-afternoon and lunchtime, and try to make them move away from their desk. Not go down to the restaurant and go and buy a sandwich and then come and sit at the desk and eat it. Everybody needs a breath of fresh air. They don't need a full lunch hour, but you need a breath of fresh air, a break away from the desk. And that's very important because that rejuvenates people. It's always useful, if possible, to have a get-together, maybe organise something like a Pilates person coming in, or for the ladies, you could have somebody come in and do the nails and book appointments. Try to get things where the team work together and spend time together. But people should be encouraged that if the working time is not suiting them for whatever reason, that they negotiate. It's much more flexible, the workplace these days, than ever it used to be. And there's lots more working from home. Then you're cutting out your commute time, and that helps enormously. 1 day a week, 2 days a week, great. All sorts of things. But it's about talking about it, getting suggestions from everybody will have different things that they would like to do. So they're not all going to be possible. But a general feeling of that everybody is pulling together and people will listen and people will not be critical of suggestions. It's very important that you don't poo-poo other people's views. Is that enough?
I think so, yeah. I think that answers it. You mentioned, I guess the last question, which is probably one from me, is you mentioned that within firms often the leadership team isn't necessarily the best technical leader. Sometimes it can be somebody who's just better.
But the leadership is not necessarily the best. It is very difficult because that is the driving force in any organisation, is the leadership. That's why I say that sometimes in the past, I think the legal profession has picked supervisors, team leaders, departmental heads, because they've been the best profit makers. And it doesn't mean that they're the right man managers or the right people managers. So I think it is important that the management is right, that it's people who are have empathy with other human beings, people who've got time for other human beings, and that is something over which the basic workers, likes of me, probably sometimes don't have any role in the selection, and it is very difficult. But it's important that when you get the opportunity and you have appraisals or team meetings, that you do say, well, and always try to do it with more than one person having the same view. We wondered whether you'd like to try this, whether we think this might be better, and come up with suggestions that might be helpful. It's all down to believing that you have the ability to change things sometimes, and you do, more so now than ever. And I know I'm repeating myself, for which I apologise slightly, but it is the same. If you don't ask, if you don't say, things stay the same. So if something irritates you, makes you slightly unwell, makes you worked up, makes you bad-tempered, or you see it impacting on somebody else, whether that be the style of management, how often you have an appraisal, the way they distribute work, you have to challenge that in as positive a way as possible to try and get change. Yeah?
Thank you, yeah. Let me just see if there are any last questions before we close this. No, I think that brings all the questions to a close. So on behalf of all the other participants, I'd like to thank you very much, Anne, for your presentation and your answers this afternoon. That's great.
Thank you very much. But if anybody wanted to phone the helpline and have a chat about anything that it's perhaps raised something or something that they maybe even disagree with, that's fine. But phone the helpline and we can have a chat about it.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you all very much for coming in. I appreciate it. It's not the most wildly exciting subject matter I know, but it is absolutely crucial to living longer, healthier, happier. And I'd love to see people starting to change things in a positive way and really, really embracing the profession, which has huge attributes and advantages with it. Thank you all very, very much indeed.
Thank you, Anne. Now, and on behalf of CITMA, thank you. So on behalf of CITMA, can we first of all thank our sponsor for the webinar series, which is Core Search. And then as the chair, I'd like to just remind you about some upcoming CITMA events before we finish for the afternoon. On the 5th of September in Glasgow, there is a CITMA lecture on evidence before the registry. On the 10th of October, there is the CITMA quiz in Leeds. And then on the 17th of October, a reminder, as many of you will know, there's the CITMA Autumn Conference being held in Birmingham. So that's evidence before the registry in Glasgow, CITMA quiz in Leeds, and the Autumn Conference in Birmingham. So please do book on those if those are interested. And for this afternoon, that brings this webinar to a close. Thank you very much for attending.